This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer? Experts in the Wire, episode 107. Garrett French. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 107 of Experts on the Wire. My guest today is Garrett French. He is the founder of Citation Labs and ZipSprout. And boy, do we have a good show for you. We're going to talk all about link building. We're going to chat about link building via local sponsorships and local SEO, and also about how to earn links directly to your sales pages, in addition to a lot of really awesome Twitter questions and maybe some other stuff that just might happen to come up as we're chatting with Garrett today. So I'm going to bring Garrett on. Garrett, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Dan. Thanks so much for having me today.
Yes.
It's nice to get out of my basement every now and then.
That's great. Thanks so much for joining me on Experts on the Wire. I first want to just quickly have you tell the listeners what you do, what type of link building work you do with Citation Labs. For those that might not be familiar with your model and style of link building.
Sure. So we're focused more on what I call the 99% of publishers. There's a lot of link builders these days, fantastic link builders who are really focused on some of the largest the name brand publishers, and we don't. I've never really figured that part out, and never gotten to where I can understand how to make a great pitch to a reporter and that sort of thing. So we've really focused on the other what I call the other 99% of publishers. Tactically, we're really looking more at kind of like guest placements is kind of a core, and then we also look at links and resource page link building would be another kind of key tactic we've really kind of explored and grown with over the years. And
I also want to mention to listeners, we're not going to chat a whole lot about these on the show, but you have some really cool tools over at Citation Labs as well that I want to urge the listeners to check out. And in a little while, we're going to chat about ZipSprout, which involves the local sponsorships. But First, I wanted to bring up something that might be a little fun for both of us. As I'm aware, you have been doing SEO for quite a while. When did you start SEO? Like about what year did you begin doing SEO?
I mean, doing it or writing about it, Dan. So 2001, yep. I started writing about it.
Wow.
For WebPro News. We had an email newsletter of about 400,000 people, and really all they wanted to hear about was SEO. Actually doing it, I mean, it hasn't been into the last maybe year or so that we've really internally kind of started our own SEO projects. I don't consider myself a practicing SEO. At all. Like, that's the technical side. I don't really feel like but okay, actually when did I start kind of doing more content and link building style work? Would have been 2006-ish, 2007-ish, right. I think is when I started contracting, being a contractor, and then slowly kind of evolved into having an agency.
So I dug up a few old articles that you were in. Not to put you on the spot or call out anything negative, but I found this interesting actually in an article from June 16th, 2010. That's almost 9 years ago to the day. You were interviewed for Vertical Measures, and they asked you an interesting question that was, what is your biggest struggle in link building? And back in 2010, I'll read really quickly, you said, I struggle most with passing on the value created by all the expert relationships I establish for my clients. Getting conversations rolling from a cold and dead stop is tremendously difficult and time-consuming work. My clients get emails and responses, but have yet to effectively convey the process importance of continuing to build these relationships out. So my question is, how has that struggle changed, and what do you find is the biggest struggle in link building today, 9 years later?
Yeah, I think it's gotten a lot more operational for me. Is where our largest struggles are now. Consistently hitting numbers for clients. There's less and less. I see less and less of an interest from clients in growing any kinds of relationships we would have started. That's by and large just a byproduct at this point. That's not. I don't. It doesn't seem like people are real eager to know what the publishers are saying, or how else can we extend. Once we've gotten a link, how do we grow the relationship? I really don't hear a lot of that. I do that particular part. I still do a lot for Citation Labs, but from an agency perspective, that part is actually I found it genuinely very difficult. Even from then until now, how do we actually make that part valuable? Because it isn't just that one link. It's how do we grow with this audience is a more important question. But anyhow, these days it's a lot more making sure we're hitting target numbers for clients. We're using all the budget that they've that they need us to in a given month, and then just keeping quality standards where they need to be for clients and meeting individual client requirements for the links that we're building. So it's a lot more. It feels a lot more kind of. I was going to say granular. That's not really the right word.
Kind of goal-driven. It sounds like it's really about they want the results.
A lot less like, oh gosh, how do we? Because explaining that broader value in 2010 felt more important to me as I guess at the size of the company I was at and the kind of work we were doing. But now we've definitely. I think I was probably at that point doing the majority of the outreach.
Right.
In any given circumstance. So I was way closer to the inbox. And so you have these moments or glimpses of opportunity, like, oh, we could grow this. This could be more. How do I explain that? But I am, pretty removed from the inbox at this point. And so I see less of that in the kinds of opportunities I'm trying to grow now, or bigger, trying to establish new approaches or new tools or what have you.
I have one other question from the past. March 16th, 2010. Somebody asked you, I think this was on WordStream. One of the questions was, what link building tools do you recommend? And your answer was Ontolo, Link Prospect Data, BuzzStream, Yahoo Site Explorer, SEO Book Toolbar, Spreadsheets, Email, and Phone. So out of those, what would you remove and what would you add, if any?
Let's see. Well, some of them have removed themselves. But the Ontolo tool is by a dear friend of mine named Ben Wills. I haven't gotten a tour in a while, but I know you're basically you're building your own index of opportunities, and then you're able to kind of sort and remove from that index yourself. And it's an astounding tool. I haven't used it in a while. Did I mention the link prospector on that list?
I don't think so.
Oh wow! So that's one that I use It's a Google scraper, Dan. It's nothing fancy, but it works at you can put in 15, 20,000 queries all at once, and you're finding everything about all the publishers about a given topic, or who relate or write about these kinds of problems. And so I use the heck out of that, and everything else we use now are qualifying tools essentially, or before it goes to human qualifying, but qualifying tools for sorting, removing obvious TLDs we don't want to reach out to, or we wouldn't want any kinds of in URL disqualifiers like the word wiki, or just stuff that we know is going to mean this isn't going to really be an opportunity for us. And most of those are we've kind of homebrewed over the years, because as we grew and we're doing more and more outreach, there were fewer and fewer tools that we're able to handle. I'm crashing my computer all the time with Excel files and stuff. So
it was fun to see Yahoo Site Explorer in there. So
that's one. Yeah. Yes.
Let's chat about one of the topics we're going to spend a little bit of time on, which is link building with local sponsorships. Sure. That's what I have here in my notes. So I'm wondering if you could set up this concept. Things that are immediately spark curiosity for me. Are we talking about, is this local SEO, or is this using local things to build links even for national companies? So what is the local thing? How does that tie in? And so I'd love for you to sort of set up just this general concept, and then we'll dive a little deeply into the actual process behind this.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because we have had national brands ask for mission-based sponsorship campaigns. So, STEM-related programs around the country that could also potentially be a link opportunity for them. So it's sort of that, in that regard, it doesn't have to be local, but we started the kind of inquiry into the space as a local link building play, just from client demand. This is what, hey, we want you to do this, and so we kind of started in that direction. I'm reluctant to call it. It is for building links, and it does impact rankings. But there are a lot of really interesting benefits to events and nonprofits. And I wouldn't even call it interesting. I would call them highly lucrative benefits. We have I was at an event recently and spoke with a lead gen, someone who was doing window, door, and gutter lead gen at the event. And I found that he was one of a team of 6. They were at 3 different events that weekend, and they drove about 50 leads over that particular weekend. Now, for them, a lead was they actually got somebody to agree to a visit from a salesperson to their home. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to call you. It was, hey, when can we actually send somebody out to your house? He said about 30% on average convert, and I didn't get an actual what the average sale price is, but 15 leads from the whole weekend. He said that they could get one or 2 leads, and they would cover their whole expense for that weekend. So it's, what I'm saying is, there's a lot of lead gen opportunity at the local event level. Now, that's a lot of infrastructure to get in place. It's a lot of work. I mean, you got to have somebody at the event the whole weekend and all that, in your tent and all that stuff. But my point is, it's not just for links. It can be, but you're really leaving a lot on the table then. I mean, there's even, we had a client, Open Door, who used the ZipSprout service for finding events. They didn't even want links. They were just for finding events, and their whole focus was just on, hey, how many people are going to be at this event, and what's the zip code? Is it in a neighborhood where we want to buy houses? They were also, interestingly, very, very focused on email newsletter list size. One of their best performing lists that we got them in was a local soccer team list.
Right.
Yeah. It was wild. It just, I would never. There's a lot of stuff I couldn't have predicted that. But anyhow, wanted to put this caveat out there. It isn't just for links. You can approach it that way, but you're really leaving a lot on the table. I think having a more kind of brand first approach, or lead gen first approach, is much stronger. Now, you're not going to get leads from those links on the like the sponsor thank you pages, or even if they do a profile of you, you've got to go to the events to get the leads. Now, or find some way to get in the newsletter. It has to have some reach attached to it or associated with it, or else the benefit isn't going to be there. Thank you for letting me talk about not link building things for a long time.
Yeah.
But this is definitely, it's an area that I think has a lot of potential for a lot of big brands. And it isn't just the links at the local level, or at the event and sponsorship level, or event and nonprofit level, that are going to provide benefit.
And so I want to make sure I understand the how the strategy works. So let's say I'm a local law firm. Is the essence of the strategy finding some sort of local thing to sponsor, like a local event, or like you said, a sports team, or a library? Like connect the dots between the company, and then what exactly are they sponsoring? And then I imagine they get the link because they're listed as a sponsor on the website of that.
That's it. Yeah. So a lot of this at the level you're getting to is about fit, or brand fit, or is this the right audience for my brand? Is this the right kind of event for my brand, or is it compatible? And you're
thinking of that from like one thing I tell clients is pretend you know nothing about SEO. Like, what event would you sponsor? Yeah. Right? Like, just as a business.
Totally. Where are your customers? Where do you think they would be? The lawyer one is really interesting because there's a lot that would be, criminal defense would be a tricky one to have a booth for, and
yeah.
But there's some like that people who do wills and that sort of thing, maybe bankruptcy. I don't know if people are going to want to talk about that at events necessarily.
Right.
But
But other industries are more conducive to that. Like the real estate thing is like perfect because they could go almost anywhere.
Funny, but I rarely see realtors at events, at booths. And I think it's a missed opportunity. Well, I mean, Open Door is a realty company. They buy your house, and then they buy it, fix it, flip it at scale. But so there is real estate there. But I really feel like the handshaking opportunity at the events, and so this is what I learned from this guy. Flipped out. I've had like 2 calls with this guy so far. Just after his weekend, how'd the weekend go? How many leads did you guys do? But he comes out from behind the booth and gets out into the walkway. So there's this whole I think local channel that's being pretty much ignored, probably because it's difficult. It's difficult to get out there, and it's painful to not do your normal weekend thing and be out trying to sell instead of flying a kite or whatever folks go do. But yeah, it's so anyhow.
You're saying one thing I think you're saying is that you could sponsor an event, get a link, but really this is about thinking bigger beyond just the link and physically showing up to the event as well.
Listen, at the local level, absolutely. Absolutely. It's, I mean, if you're, there's not a lot of cases where someone is really trying, because local links are usually more expensive on a per link basis also. So you might as well just go into it knowing that it's not just for the link.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah,
I had
a lot more.
So one example I can think of, I had a sales recruiter client for a while. Now I want to bridge this gap to national clients potentially. They were national sales recruiters, but they targeted different cities, like different markets. So they targeted Boston, they targeted New York, San Fran, etc. They weren't physically in those places, but one thing they did 3 or 4 years ago was sponsor meetup groups. I believe meetup.com has removed or made their sponsor page a lot harder to find, maybe because some people were building links to it. But in that case, I would find meetup groups that were an audience match for them, have them reach out, and then offer like $200 to sponsor the meetup group for the year or something. So what are some ways besides that potentially that maybe national clients can find groups or cities or do the prospecting to find something that would be a match for them? If you're a more national company, and I don't know if you want to use a certain industry as an example, I could certainly think of a few off the top of my head, but I'm curious for anybody, this is for the people listening out there. So they're sitting there going, okay, I like this idea, sponsor local stuff, but how do I start to go about doing that? That's what I want to answer for the listeners.
Sure. First, you're thinking about what type of event you want to sponsor. Is it a art fair or a 5K? Then you're thinking of all of the kind of location parameters that are going to define the reach that you want to have. So that could be all the zip codes in the area, just the city name. The larger the city, the more you need to lean on the zip codes, really. And then you're adding in queries like sponsor us. I'm trying to think that I've done an article on this on the ZipSprout site that really kind of goes through some of the main footprints that we see.
And you're doing these search
sponsorship
queries.
levels is sponsorship levels is a big one because you're on a page that's talking about sponsorships.
Right.
And so you're looking for those really indicative footprints, and you run all those queries, and you've got a big batch of opportunities to start looking for.
And you're running those queries in Google, right? And you can either do it manually or you can use a tool like the one you mentioned.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I would use a tool. I start checking manually, so I'm going to start any kind of big query run that I do. I just want to make sure that I'm on base with stuff like sponsorship levels. Another big one is thanks to our sponsors. And sometimes I'll put that in quotes, sometimes not in quotes, depending upon how deep and wide we're trying to go. And then it's all the geographic kind of qualifiers, and then if you're looking for runs, 5Ks, festivals, parades, I mean, what have you? What is there what kinds of events are there locally where where your brand would be a nice fit? Just look for stuff like thanks to our sponsors, and then like the word event maybe, and then the location qualifier, and then also set your query to the past year as well. So you can tell Google just to search for the past year. Yeah. So then you're going to find stuff that's more, that is more recent, that isn't just ranking because it's a strong domain, but that's, pages that have been published in the past year. And you've got a great set then of kinds of the array or the range of events that are coming up.
In this style of link building, and I know, again, you said it's about much more than the links, but from the link aspect, are you doing any traditional link qualifying? Are you looking at domain authority, or are you looking at the site? Are you ruling stuff out that has a high likelihood of being spammy? Like, are you filtering anything in that sense for this type of link building?
We, on the ZipSprout side, we let the client make those final assessments themselves. So we're passing, hey, we want 20 links or 20 sponsorships in Chicago. And then we go and find, and we try to get a sense of what they want and don't want ahead of time. And then we'll go and do our prospecting and qualifying. I mean, we end up doing phone calls a lot of times with these folks. And then we have a list that we can show with pricing. And so, Dan, pricing is the main thing with sponsorships. It's the thing they don't want to tell you to the very end, or, that they don't often publish. They do sometimes, but not often. And so that's really why you have to kind of have these calls and make sure that this whole sponsorship thing can go through so that you can fulfill on what you agreed to with your client.
And so, speaking of that, this would be the last question on this, and then we'll get to some Twitter questions before we talk about citable elements, which I'm very excited to chat about. In terms of that, when you're now ready to approach some of these events or companies or whatnot about the sponsorships, do you have your client pick up the phone and call them? Do you have them email? Like, what is there a certain approach?
Our team does that. Yeah, we do. We handle nobody. We haven't found a client yet that said, yeah, we'd love to make those phone calls. That'd be really, no, we handle all of that. And there's, usually a couple stragglers. Once you've paid everybody, there's a couple stragglers in any given batch of, sponsorships in a project who, so we have to get at them on Facebook, sometimes on Twitter, hey, you said da 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 and you'd have it by da da da. Where's so but there's a lot of kind of hand holding and just getting that last. Especially if you're trying to do this at any kind of, scale.
Yeah. And I think finally, are there any considerations as far as like anchor text or what URL you send people to, or?
We usually, again, the client's defining that or nudging us on that. But I mean, it should be a URL. If you're trying to establish some kind of location relationship or area relationship between the page that you want to have ranking higher, that's the page you should be building that link to. If you are only in that area, or could be homepage, which is probably preferred then. But an anchor text, I would say whatever they normally do on this page, have an image with the link in it, or something that we don't mess with. don't mess with anchor text.
It's dangerous nowadays.
That's our starting point. Is just let's not
natural.
Not touch that or go there.
So this will segue nice. I've categorized some of our Twitter questions. We had a lot of great ones. I don't know I'll be able to take all of them, but I want to jump in and take a few. So the first category of Twitter questions I want to ask you is around judging and measuring the value of links. A lot of people are curious about this. First one's from Bill Slosky, former podcast guest. I'll link to his show in the show notes. He wants to know, what signals do you look for to decide if a site is one you might want to link from?
It's a great question, and thank you, Bill. So we would start with, again, coming back to more of a topical approach to prospecting. So this is our first kind of qualifier, is do they write about the topics that relate to the client page that we're promoting? Are they on topic? And that's defined by what kinds of tasks and problems does this particular publisher help solve. That's what a topic is in our context. So that's level one. And that's not what Bill was asking, but that's really where it starts.
Right.
And then, like, do we want to link from them? Well, our qualifiers are really more around, like, what we train our team on is this a real site? And so that's relatively intangible. We both know when we look at a site, typically, is it a real site or not? So it's kind of a sniff test sort of thing. But we're looking for things like, do they sell advertising? Interestingly, don't let me segue too far on this, but one of the key differentiators between what we call that 1% and the other 99% is the 1% are usually advertising supported. The other 99% are usually doing the publishing for visibility purposes.
That is a great way. Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, just something we've discovered over the years, and just to kind of clarify. But if it's a small site and they're offering advertising, that's weird usually, because what they usually mean is, hey, we'll sell you a link. If they openly solicit guest posts, nah, this is good. This is a bad sign. Do they have sidebar links, with anchor text in them? Oops, we must have found a PBN. That's the kind of thing we're really looking out for. Is are we in a bad neighborhood, or are we on a real kind of business owner, or a real business's or organization's website?
And that's great. I love that. So let's say now you've weeded out the junk, right? Mm-hmm. The stuff that's low quality. Do you look for anything on to establish a potential positive, like domain authority, or follow versus no follow, or where the link's going to be, or any of those things that could indicate, hey, this might be a more valuable link?
Well, we're at this, once we've disqualified everyone, TLD would be another kind of easy disqualifier. And then we've human qualified everything. The next level of qualifier is the publisher themselves. Well, do they respond?
Yeah.
Do they want a free article?
Oh, interesting.
And then we can look, because so what if they have a metric we like? So who cares?
Right.
They don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that just because we like them doesn't mean that they're going to like us, Dan. So, we go out and we see who is actually going to respond. And then that's our pool of decision making. But even, once you've gotten a bunch of people to say, yeah, I'd love an article, I'd love to post your link, whatever. No, we're not paying for any of these, by the way. So this is the world of, like, as white hat as possible link building, but where you're not paying for any of the links that go up. You don't control any of this stuff. But, out of 100 people, maybe 30, 35 are actually going to end up linking. So even if you've made your selections from your 100 that said, yeah, we'd love a link, well, they're not all going to link anyways. So it's sort of moot in our process. And what we've learned over the years is we can differences, that's fine, but the real person who makes the final choice is the editor or publisher themselves. So that's really more of what we focus on, is relating well with them, working well with them, and providing great content.
I like that logic a lot. So I have a question from Andrew at Optimizy. Hi, Andrew. Hope you're well. Longtime listener of the show. He says, if you gain a load of links around the same time and your rankings go up, how do you know which ones move the needle? In your experience, how long? And so, two-part question. Part two, in your experience, how long is the lag time for gaining or losing a link to the impact on ranking? So part one, can you know if any specific link helped? And then part two, can you see a time frame there?
I mean, sometimes I have an intuitive, like, it was probably this one. I don't know a way to know that. We have a tool we're working on that could kind of try to pinpoint when a link came in versus when ranking for a particular page shifted or changed. But I don't know. Only Google knows that. It would be the easy response. Anything else you can think to tease out there, Dan? I mean, it's a great question, but I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I'm in your camp. I mean, I've seen a link come in from a high authority website at the same time as other links, but you kind of go, you know what? This one sent a lot of referrals. It got shared a lot. Yeah. You just have a sense, but it is hard to tell for sure. I mean, I think you could maybe really at a granular level dig in and really try to pick apart what's happening. But even like you said, only Google would still know at that point what affected what. I mean, I think there's a lot of other people, when they say links, they think about just PageRank, right? But there's also like you've pointed out, the topical authority of that link. When did Google crawl it? When they crawled it, did that force them to just crawl your content more? And did that additional crawling actually impact the rankings going up? Because links cause other things to happen that I think a lot of other people miss. And so I think, and it also could be question two of causation and correlation as well. Did you get the link because you ranked better and then somebody found, you know what I mean? Because the rankings can precede the link sometimes as well. So I'm in your camp on that. Do you have any thoughts around the lag time for measuring the impact on rankings as far as links gained or lost?
So that's an interesting question too. And I do think it varies from site to site, and it varies from, keyword to keyword or vertical to vertical. So my consultant answer is it depends. But I on the lag time for when you remove a link or a link goes down, one thing we've observed, at least for, my uncle does, he's an auto mechanic in North Carolina, and we did some sponsorships for him, once in 2016, and his rankings went up some. We did a handful of sponsorships, and then, a year or so later, all the links went down, they're gone, but his rankings didn't go down. So what's the lag time for links to change after you remove them? Well, if you disavow them, it'd be a different story, I presume. But if you just remove them, in some cases, it may not have or I've seen it not have an impact. I'm not saying it never, that's all. It will always be the state of the algorithm, but it's something that I've observed. And my suspicion is that at the local level, there's just not a lot of link graph to be had, right? And so it's in any scrap of info that you can kind of get together or kind of amass around any given entity at the local level, you got to kind of cling to it a little bit, Yeah. But that said, I don't know anybody at Google. Nobody told me that that's what happens. But as far as link gains, I mean, depending on the site, if it's a pretty well-established site, I think 2 to 3 months isn't crazy to start seeing some impact on rankings for if you're building links to a specific page. If you're building links like authority based or the kind, like links that are from that 1% of media, the impact on your targeted rankings could potentially take longer. I mean, like the ROI rankings, but sometimes I've seen rankings go up pretty quickly after a big mention from a big publisher too. So it can depend on where the link's from, and certainly where the whatever vertical you happen to be in as well.
Yeah, let's take a couple of Twitter questions. So Malcolm Slade has a great question along the same lines. So what do you feel is more important or has more impact? 10 links from indexable pages on major news sites, or 10 links from indexable pages on relevant niche websites?
So my first answer is go, if you can get them both, get them both.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like, I want all of them. But then if I have to really choose, which I will, Malcolm, thank you. I would I mean, I think I would be able to make more money over time from the niche links, especially if I have really worked out how and why these links will be occurring from these niche websites, and what kind of positioning I'm going to have to their audience on that site. There's a link I got from Mr. Dean at Backlinko, and he linked to the link prospector at some point from some place on his website, and it's still one of the biggest refers I have to this day to the link prospector page. I look in Google, and month after month, it's just a nice, steady stream of visitors. So would I rather have that link or a New York Times link that never sends anybody, and it's buried, and I don't know why they'd be writing about citation labs. I hope they wouldn't, actually. But that's like, which one would I rather have? I'd take the Brian Dean link in a heartbeat, because that's my audience. These are my people. This is where I need to be visible. Mm-hmm. The visibility value in a larger arena, I think it goes down a little, and unless you really are trying to reach a mass market. So that's that'd be the other consideration here, is if you genuinely serve a mass market or a consumer market, then probably the big visibility publishers would be more impactful because of that added brand benefit or added visibility, audience reach kind of benefit.
I think it brings up an interesting point, maybe even slightly philosophical, is like, what is the difference nowadays between a big brand or publisher and not? For example, take Tim Ferriss's website. I'm sure you're familiar with Tim Ferriss. Huge domain authority, so much traffic. He has millions of downloads per podcast episode. Yet, how would you define his site? Is he a publisher in the category of HuffPo, etc., or is he an independent publisher? Because I think that shows you that you can have an independent publisher with a lot of traffic potential, right? So how would you classify his site?
I don't know. What a wonderful question. But I mean, the authority of being published or being mentioned by Tim Ferriss versus the authority of being mentioned by Huffington Post, I would take Tim Ferriss. I mean, really depending on what I'm selling, but just a link from Tim Ferriss is almost a personal level endorsement. Who was it on Huffington Post that has mentioned or cited my company or something I said? Don't know. Yeah. So it seems like it's going to be more authoritative to that audience or to an individual or to a given audience. But I do think it would, absolutely depend on what I'm selling and where it fits. If I'm selling some kind of protein powder or what have you, I think I'd take the Tim Ferriss link in a second. Yeah. But how do we classify them? Everybody's a publisher. Everybody with a website is a publisher to me, Dan. So that's. Everybody's a publisher. And then Huffington Post is more of an ad-supported publisher. Tim Ferriss is he's a visibility-supported publisher. So he's technically in my camp, the 99% camp. Right. But I still think these a so-called 1% focused link builder would absolutely go after a visibility on Tim Ferriss's blog. So a lot of it, I think, whatever my definitions might be, or my categories might be, they're kind of shattered by intent or need of the moment, or just what audience who has the most reach and that sort of thing. So categorize all you want. There's always going to be category busters.
Marie Haynes, also a guest on the show 3 times, was our very first guest as well. She wants to know, are you still seeing benefit from links obtained from guest posting? I have a guess at what your answer is going to be here.
The short answer is yes, and so is the long answer. No, just kidding. Absolutely. It's
And I think maybe one place her question is coming from, sorry to interrupt, but perhaps it's because Google every now and again comes out with a post or something and says, guest post links, right. Don't do it, or infographics, don't do it. So I think that scares people or makes people believe maybe there's less value in that. But I'm wondering, maybe from that perspective, maybe that's where Marie's coming from. And what are your thoughts?
Let's take a step back just from what is a guest post and say, and recognize that Google is still, whether we call it a guest post or not, or think of it as a guest post, it's still text on a page that includes potentially valuable information. And if it's from a trusted domain, then it's going to have an impact no matter what we call it. We do often strive to not publish as a guest post when possible with publishers. We don't want to, we try to downplay that relationship. But an editorial citation in context, that's what Google lives and breathes on. So if we're linking out in a justifiable way, Dan, if we're citing a resource or a sales page, if you will, in a way that's justifiable, fits the content, and all of our links do the same, and they kind of support a general thesis by the author, and they're helping the reader achieve a task more efficiently. Is it a guest post? Well, is this content doing a good job?
Right.
Is it helping readers solve a problem? I think focus there. What we call the tactic, it's a guest. Sure, it is a guest post. Is it still effective? Yes. Is it frowned on? Yes. Can you do it well? Yes.
It's semantics a lot, really. And I think perhaps there's a certain style of guest posts that was more predominant in the past, is maybe what people think of when they think of what Google has frowned upon or maybe doesn't work now.
We're guest posting for ZipSprout right now. And how we approach that is, hey, we do outreach. It's like, hey, Claudia's my COO at ZipSprout. Is like, hey, we like to introduce that we have a sponsorship tool, this local sponsorship finder. So we've got a database of 60,000 of these opportunities from around the country that are searchable, and you can find your own. You can run your own campaigns. But we send emails like, hey, we'd love to give you a demo of the tool, and while we're talking, we'd love to find a topic that you'd be open to us writing on for you. And so this is about visibility. This is about getting in front of new audiences. And we'll take any small, medium, large audience at this point. We're trying to we're stumping, getting the word out. But I think SEOs can often lose sight of the branding benefit or the visibility benefit of a guest post. Mm-hmm. And so that piece also, I think, is that the good side of guest posting? Yeah, probably more so. Highly branded, focus on saying something new, contributing strong value to an audience.
You just said something a second ago I don't want to skip, because it seems like a really cool strategy. You are getting your foot in the door by offering a free demo on the front end, but then saying, hey, while we're here, let's talk about content. Break down the thought process there, because I think that's a strategy that others could maybe use in their situations.
Sure. I mean, we prospected for a list of local marketing agencies from around the country, made sure they had blogs, and then started sending emails like, hey, we've got this new tool we're really excited about. We want to give you a demo. We'll offer you a month free. And while we're talking, we'd love to figure out if there's a piece of content that we could write for you, for your audience.
So you're offering them a free month. That's a big incentive to this.
Yeah, and not everybody does sponsorships. We have found this was so exciting, but we talked with a guy at an agency who did about 20 hours a month of sponsorship prospecting.
Wow.
So half of a week a month he does. So we could save him those 20 hours. Just, it's not going to be no time at all, but it's definitely going to get cut way down, because we can, we've already done so much discovery, and we've identified which of these sponsorship opportunities, what the different benefit levels are for the sponsorships, and what the price, it's a snapshot of price from when we checked in from 2016 until now. So things could have changed, but it's just going to save him a ton of time. But not everybody does a ton of sponsorships, so we could probably better qualify our outreach to saying, hey, are you guys doing local sponsorships for links and brand visibility, or brands and leads? If so, we'd love to intro our tool. I need to actually talk to our team about that. That would be a stronger pitch than, hey, we'd love to demo our tool. Who cares if we want to demo our tool? Go away, please.
Right.
No, I don't.
Right.
I could spend my whole day watching demos of people's tools if I let it happen.
Yeah.
So we could be better qualified. So that would be one point I would make to anybody thinking to do this is just make sure you've got a strong qualifying initial question. And then, I think, we have two goals with every kind of conversation we'd have. And we just make sure we demo strong and we sound as intelligent as we're able. And then maybe they'd be open to some, to a guest post from us as well. It's a little tricky because sometimes we're stepping on toes. The sponsorships. So, and we, as an agency, the ZipSprout has the tool, and we do sponsorship campaigns. So I asked, is this going to be conflict? Because otherwise we shouldn't do it. And he's like, no, go ahead. Won't be a big deal. So I did, there can be, and this, I'm talking all this through, Dan, for people who are considering trying this out.
Yeah.
But it's, you just think about who would be a good fit, who's your best customer. When we're still looking for those kinds of beta users who will really put us through the ringer, right? Really help us establish what kinds of use cases there are, and are we really helping them save time? We have to have conversations with them. So this is part of our strategy too. Is just we've absolutely got to get into the weeds and talk like specifics with potential users.
Yeah, I really like that strategy. I'm already thinking of how I can present that to clients in their situations. Let's chat about these citable elements. So you have a strategy which you talked a little bit with Ross on his show at Siege Media. I forget the name of his show. We'll put it in the show notes. But what I have here in my notes is something you called citable elements for making sales pages more linkable. So I'm wondering if at first, can you just break down this strategy at sort of its very basic level?
Sure. The basic level is lining up, understanding what kinds of topics are commonly written about, what kinds of how-to topics and are commonly written about in your space, and then making sure that there's something that could be citable within that body, with something within that body of discussion and problem solving that occurs that could be citable that you could add to your product or service page. And there's a lot of other problems to solve. So it's not just can we tack something onto our sales or our product or service page. It's also, can we genuinely make it fit in the context of the page? So we don't want to just, shove something here. It needs to also serve it needs to fit contextually. It needs to not be jarring. It needs to be utility focused and, not make the people who have worked so long on getting the funnel right, not upset them or mess up the actual conversion.
And the real reason, one of the big reasons this strategy is valuable, as far as I understand, is it's typically very hard to get a link directly to a product or category or service page.
It's very hard to justify that link. It's not hard to get. You can go out and buy them,
true.
But or stuff them anywhere. But to make them actually really fit, kind of contextually, and I use the term justifiably within an article. That's where there's a lot of art and science. Kind of, it's not. I'm overblowing it a little bit, but that's where the kind of the thinking really has to happen.
Yeah. I think, can you give an example, if possible, either generic one or example of the industry that you've done this with, so the listeners have sort of a concrete picture of that?
Yeah. I could give, so one, I should have done this before. Hold on, let me. The one I always go to, it's for a current client, and I don't feel comfortable sharing that one. An example I gave, I talked with Morty, but it had a wonderful show with this on a podcast with Morty. The example I gave was if we were trying to build links to a gas station's webpage. Right? a specific gas station's location, one of the things that gas station would know, or theoretically would know, is when it's the busiest and when it's the least busy, when there's the longest wait times, when there's the shortest wait times. Well, the shortest wait times would be the best time to go and get gas if you're in a hurry or in a rush or nearby, or if you office park nearby. So theoretically, you could reach out. This is where the long shot happens, and usually it's I try to keep things more lined up. I can give another example, but then you could reach out maybe to tourism publishers where you're kind of saying how to have the best possible or most efficient visit to city name. Well, the best time to get gas if you're visiting the museum is this time. That's so random, but that's the kind of what you're looking for, is adding utility, reducing the friction of increasing efficiency for the reader or the visitor.
Sounds like it depends upon the actual design of the page.
Oh,
so so where have you found that it makes the most sense to put these citable elements on the page itself?
Yeah, so sometimes sidebar, like top right, makes a lot of sense, where we're positioning some data point that is relevant and contributes to the page and contributes to the visitor's understanding of the what's listed on this page. So average temperature in city name, so you can pick the best time to go visit that city, for example. Their orbits actually had a really strong, like, lots of linkable elements, and it was, the average cost of a meal in city name. Maybe it wasn't orbits. I'll find out and we'll put it in the show notes, Dan. But it was just a lovely example after lovely example of these elements on the page. So they want to get people, the people who are looking for tickets to Austria. But what was on this page was, here's how much you're going to spend per meal approximately. Here's how much you're going to spend for a nice meal.
Right.
This it's stuff like that. These are the kinds of granular, friction reducing. You're planning out. You're able to plan resource requirements. Mm-hmm. How much time is it going to take? How long do I have to wait for a cab? What's the availability of cabs? How much do things cost? These are the kinds of planning, resource need elements or items that really help visitors or to your page. That first of all, it helps them believe in you as an expert, or that your brand knows what it's talking about, or this page. So wow, they know this kind of granular level of detail. And then it also is giving them some advanced knowledge for their trip, which is something that if you're off-site and you found somebody who's written a guide to traveling to Austria, and they mention, a restaurant, or going to restaurants, you could ask them to add a link to that particular section to cite the cost, how much they're going to need. And now you've actually increased the value of their bit of content, right? Because now visitors to that page can plan ahead.
Right.
So you're trying to solve micro problems. They're not big honking how-to guides necessarily that are just massive, but what you're really looking for, these small bits that can add a lot to someone's overall experience, or make them feel like a lot about what you're talking about, or that if they implemented this little tip or this little bit of advice, they're going to get more efficiency, or they're going to spend less money, save time on this, that, or the other kind of common task that's associated to your page.
One thing that I know works well is statistics content and link acquisition. So it strikes me like a company like MailChimp, for example, might put on a sales page email open rate statistics by industry, maybe like the top 10 and like a little chart on the right-hand side. And I almost think of this as the paradigm might be to think about what piece of content marketing would get links, and then just think about, well, this piece of content marketing might just be getting linked for this one little idea in there.
Right.
Let me just take that one idea, put that on my sales page and get links on the sales page. And maybe even from that right sidebar, link over to the full article.
Sure.
So you can still send people there. Sure. But that's what this sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's, from that example, which I love and I'll probably use again, Dan, thank you.
Yep.
I'm still grasping for great examples. But that is, with that concept, you could have a little graphic as well that you could then offer people, for, hey, why don't you add this little chart to your page? It will really help visitors. It helps encapsulate this concept, and it's factual data from our site, and just make sure you thank us.
Yeah, I like that
by citing us.
And it's kind of like this really nice. I love when all things line up in this nice little Venn diagram where there's this tiny little area in the middle where three circles sort of intersect, right? I mean, you have the value added to the page for the shopper, you have the value added to the page for the person wanting the statistic, and you have the value for the person linking. Right. And those three sort of intersect. So I'm curious, once you sort of develop or have a page with a citable element, how do you go about acquiring links on those? Is that also an outreach process, or what's your process there?
It's absolutely outreach based. You could do, going back to our kind of initial example, if you're well, not the gas station one, but going back to the MailChimp example. So this is that's a lovely space to be working in, because there's so much written about email response rates. Email marketing is just such a huge topic. There's probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of publishers who've written about it. So you've got your pick of where you really want to go at this point and how you'd kind of approach them. But a few ways of kind of packaging this is kind of that, like, hey, you wrote about this concept and I've got a graphic that actually illustrates it. I think it would make a great addition to this page on your site. Would you consider adding? Can I send it over, or would you consider adding it? Here's the actual
file, or
thank you. The file you're going to need.
The embed code.
Here's the markup you're going to need to place it effectively. Something like that could be one way to do it. Now, if you're sort of correcting, so what we've also found is that in any given vertical, there's frequently given advice, right? And you can. We've actually actively counted it, Dan, like gone into a space and counted the most frequently given advice. So you can kind of get a sense ahead of time of what people are saying the most frequently. And now if you can figure out an element based on this most frequent advice, now you've got a piece that can fit like almost everywhere. Because what people are, you can predict what they're likely to have been talking about on any given page, and you've got something that augments this frequently given bit of advice. Now the trick remains making it line up with your sales page, right? That's really, because it's easy to do to say, all right, well, what's the most frequent advice? Let's make a little a mini infographic that explains this one most frequently given tip. But how do we make sure that lines up with our sales page? Because it might not. And so that's where it's really a lot of, to me, still trial and error for matching any given page up to what would make a great element. Basically, it's what is already being said frequently, or you're augmenting it, you're adding to it, or you're suggesting something that people don't normally do, just so it can stand out enough in the inbox when you've emailed somebody for them to say, oh yeah, that is a good idea.
Yeah.
That is worth actually adding, because that's a pain. You're creating a pain you're creating a pain for somebody, a job for somebody, like, hey, I've got to go edit a page. That is some people's job, but nobody probably looks forward to that, addition. So it really has to justify that extra bit of work. So absolutely, hey, here's here's an illustration for something you've said that will help make your article stronger. The other is just, hey, I'd love to write an article for you. Just can I write something on X, Y, or Z? And then you've got an opportunity then to kind of position your link how you'd like.
Yeah, I like that strategy a lot. So I want to jump to a couple other link strategy questions we got from Twitter. Sure. I know we're going well over the hour here. I've got time if you have time, Garrett. So sure. We'll just keep going. So Ashley McNamara wants to know, what is a good framework to determine how many links and what link velocity you need to succeed in a given vertical? And just to caveat this question, I know this could be a whole episode in itself for sure. So, I'd love to hear your perspective on that, about what velocity and how many you need to succeed.
So it's a fantastic question, and you're going to want to be looking at obviously the competitors in the SERP that you're vying for, right? Like what happens in this SERP, for this keyword or kind of broadly across this kind of category. In terms of velocity, this is if you're in a B2B space, there probably won't be a ton of velocity,
right?
So you're going to want to kind of have an incremental play if you're trying to blend in with the surroundings. If you're in a B2C space, you might be able to have a little more velocity because this is a frequently written about topic, or lots of people publish on this. Lots of people need to cite this kind of information or this type of data, and so it's velocity is definitely in the eye of the vertical.
Yeah.
Tolerable velocities.
When you look at competition in a SERP, do you look at domain authority? Do you look at number of linking root domains, number of links to a given page, or all of them?
All of them. Yeah, all of them for sure. And then, you throw everything out the window when you see what discrepancy there is between some of these.
Right.
Do links even matter? You're why is this page or this site with 300 root linking domains outranking this one with 30,000 or not that many, but that's the part that on the link building side, I don't know that we really can solve that. There's something else going on in this particular vertical, or in this for this keyword. But it's a place to start, and you really will see kind of what table stakes are for this term in terms of root linking domains, and then also links to the specific URL.
Yeah,
and you do want to look at the kinds of links to the URL. Are there other blogs actually linking to these kinds of URLs? Is this going to be weird if all of a sudden we've got 50 blog links to our whatever sales page where it just doesn't really happen like that?
So you kind of have to strike a balance between looking natural, right? So you don't run in the danger territory, but at the same time acquiring enough at a decent velocity, right? So that must be, is that a challenging balance to strike? Or is it just a matter of being, like you said, pacing it out, maybe being smart about it and not being too aggressive?
No, it's challenging.
Yeah.
It's absolutely challenging because it's so hard to get the link in the first place, Dan. It's so hard to predict whether someone's going to put a link up or not. And so you kind of never quite know how much work you have to do to get any given, because we're not buying, we have rough ideas. It really is much easier on the ZipSprout side where we have, where when you are walking into a place with money, you can dictate a lot more when things happen and what the velocities look like. But yeah, it can definitely be difficult. But especially, we'll have clients who want like 2 links to one URL, and that's usually pretty difficult to make sure we get exactly 2 links. Getting 1 link to anything is relatively easy. Getting 9 is, if you just push really hard, you can get to 9. But getting exactly to 2, you're never quite sure how hard you got to push to get to that, especially because sometimes a URL is its own learning experience, Dan. Like we don't know how to build links to this thing yet, to this topic or in this area. And so it's difficult on a lot of different levels to kind of get velocity right, I would say.
Yeah.
For us, I wouldn't say, probably other people have solutions and have solved that, but I think velocity is a very difficult problem. And my preference is to work in spaces where velocity is likely to be ignored or to have very little play in the SERP itself. So we're not raising any flags or alarms.
I had a great question from Scott Clark. Part about fixing broken links and also about how do you measure the value of links. Just curious to get your perspective on this. So he said he had a new client discovery project. They found 404s from places like CNN, Wall Street Journal, LA Times, .govs, like really high authoritative links. There are about 15 or 20 of them. They fixed all of them. So they found these 404s, like broken backlinks, fixed them in about 3 weeks. He says, and we can take his word for it, that otherwise the site is good. There's no issues. 3 months later, there's still 0 ranking increase. And so now he and his client is questioning, does this link building thing even work? Do you have any ideas on why this quote unquote surge in authority by fixing these links didn't actually seem to move the needle?
Maybe Google hadn't taken anything away after the links 404'd, like no authority away, maybe. And then maybe 3 months wasn't long enough. I don't know. I definitely, there's a lot speculate. Of maybes in there. Yeah. But
my question would be, how old were those links? What pages were they on? Are they buried on a Wall Street Journal article from 2009 that nobody looked?
The SEO community, and a link from the Wall Street Journal, like being a grand slam for anybody.
Yeah. Is it really?
And maybe just having that domain, maybe it doesn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
I think it does. I mean, I know it can, and I've seen it have impact, but maybe that's I don't know. Just maybe it isn't as impactful as we think it will be,
Yeah. There's a lot of variables too. I mean, we can definitely, 9 times out of 10, when a client or somebody says to me, "Oh, the site's fine, everything's fine," like we've audited, like I always find issues. So,
fair enough.
There could be other issues with the site that are causing the rankings to not change on it. There could be high competition, right? There could be so many reasons why.
What's the vertical also? Do all competitors have these same links or links from these domains also? Because it might not see a big win. I don't know. I mean, that's definitely a stumper in terms of me feeling like I would have a more any one of these being more certain than the other, Dan. I just don't know.
And part of his question here is about questioning the value of links at all, right? Like doing so, and I totally empathize. Like you do something like this, he says it was a lot of work, which totally makes sense, but you do this and then you don't see a result. So part of this, I think, is questioning, is this the right way to measure the value of this? And or what are other ways to measure the value of this sort of process? For example, I've done this process with other clients in the past, and they've come back and said, wow, like we didn't get that many links back, but we restarted relationships with these publishers that, we hadn't talked to this writer for 2 years and that sort of thing. So, I mean, perhaps should Scott and others out there listening be thinking of this in a bigger context?
I like that. I like where you're going with that, Dan, because that is let's rekindle why haven't we been published in the Wall Street Journal since 2009?
Yeah.
What happened? How can we continue the narrative from this this mention we've had previously? Because getting in the first place is actually a pretty good ticket to get in a second time, because you've kind of been pre-qualified by a writer there. So it's a great kind of foot in the door, and for any other publisher as well. That's a really wonderful observation. I think it's a great kind of place to begin a new approach or new assault on visibility in any of the major publishers. That's a good thought.
How else do you, with clients, measure the value of the link work that you're doing? I know we've chatted about this a little bit offline. So happy to review any of that stuff. But I mean, obviously you can report back to a client, hey, we got you 20 links, and show them the links. But are there other ways you're showing the ROI and the value of this sort of work?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. Currently, we're working on a tool to show that, to show the change in individual URLs to which we've built links, when the links came in, approximately, and then when we observed ranking changes. Also, we've had a suggestion from a consultant, a bright man, who Dan suggested actually on this one that we also check when the bot has visited the page. We look at log files and see when the bot visited to see what impact, or just to kind of see what the links may have done in terms of triggering a bot visit, and then kind of time to ranking change after that. So this is something that it's almost embarrassing, but really what our deliverable is, and we're trying to move past this, real actively at this point. But what our core deliverable is a spreadsheet of links built. And I mean, cool, great, good job. We charge for links, so that's what we should be delivering. But that's not ultimately where the value is created or most effectively demonstrated, right? It is in ranking increases. Why else would you be doing this? As that's where the revenue comes from. So we've got a good start on a tool where it's going to be just an individual URL rank tracker, which I think is going to give clients a much better insight into the impact of the work we're doing. Because right now we rely on an SEO team to establish the value of our work.
Right. That's you basically deliver the links, but then somebody else, is it like an internal team, maybe with a client? Yes. They take that information and then they connect the dots to rankings, to traffic.
Correct.
I see. Great. I'm excited to see this tool, by the way. And that would be my one last thought for Scott as well, back to his question, and then we'll get to some other Twitter questions. But I'd be curious to know, did the Google bot hit the links once they reappeared, right? And so I would go into log files, look at your refers, because maybe Google didn't even hit those links because they don't crawl every page every day or a month or even every 3 months. So that's the other thing I'd want to know as well. And that's something your tool you're developing could maybe help solve for as well. Let's chat about some other questions that I got from Twitter here. One from Brittany Muller of Moz. She wants to know, what do average link builders get wrong?
I see a lot of kind of literal interpretation of relevance, or kind of a real fixed belief about what relevance is, and it's usually pretty confining and restricting in terms of ideation and thinking about what can we do, how can we build links here. So that's as a starting point, it's just, hey, this is a really kind of straw man almost example, but this is real. We had a client many years ago. They sold luggage, so they wanted links from luggage blogs.
Yeah, it's so literal.
Website.
It's like, this is our topic. We need links from pages about this topic. Right.
Yeah, and so that was confounding and confining, and we weren't able to go very far with that particular client. Now, you and I both know that really travel would be a great space also to kind of explore. But that was that's kind of the kind of literal, almost keyword blinders that SEOs can have sometimes. The other would just be kind of the domain authority is kind of the same thing. It's like, hey, look, we only want domain authority this or higher, which fine, go get it. That's great. That's going to be really restrictive ultimately, because you're not going to, for us, if that's an early stage restriction, we're not going to be able to find our way forward. Like, how do we work in this space? How do we communicate value and to the publishers, or communicate? How do we establish the link to this particular kind of URL in context in a way that it's justifiable and really fits the article? That's learning that has to happen, and it can't happen unless we're actively building these links. And so it can ultimately be very restrictive around learning, frankly, just how do we do this? Because it's sort of like you setting the bar too high and you won't ever figure out how to jump, so you got to set it a little lower on the DA side. I would humbly suggest to new practitioners. And there is a lot of still pervasive belief around, DA. The higher the DA, the better the link, the more impact it's going to have. And that's not necessarily wrong, or there is, I believe some evidence that shows that that's the case, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this level or quality of a publisher is going to be able to or willing to link to one of your sales pages. So it's also, what are we trying to build links to? What page, what specific URLs are we trying to build links to? That has a lot of impact over where we're going to be going for links, where we're going to be going for or to find publishers that who we can contribute value to in some way. So anyhow, those two I would say would be the kind of the most it's when folks are restricting themselves too much at the very beginning. Certainly establish restrictions as you proceed, but at the beginning you should kind of be open to what kinds of possibilities are out there. Yeah. You need to have some level of qualification around any given URL, right, or any given publisher. But at the end of the day, you want to kind of be open to opportunities. What does the publishing space look like? Oh, wow, look, there's we could go this direction if we go into parenting publishers. We could go this direction if we are writing for seniors, or, there's all these different audiences out there, all these different ways of getting in front of. I think being hyper restrictive prevents you from really seeing what is actually out there. Right? Yeah. You're not going to see what the landscape really looks like if you're only looking for these very specific types of metrics to determine the scope of your campaign.
Makes sense. I have a great question from Jonathan Waller. He wants to know, why is link building frowned upon or hush-hush by the vast majority of influencers in our space, in the SEO space, especially when it is still the number one ranking signal and always has been? I think we could debate that.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I mean, they're like, I've seen what I see people being excited to share on Twitter has definitely shifted over the past, I would say 5 or 6 years
since
definitely
Penguin
what's really shared and what people really get excited about are the 1% facing methodologies. And so I think that's kind of perceived as real link building, or so. I mean, for me, it comes back to what's really moving the needle, which is why we're making that tool. But why is it hush hush? Why is it sort of?
Do you think Google has pushed things in that? I mean, Penguin was 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. And like I said, they published these blog posts like, don't do infographics. And I remember at one point they published something like free products, which to me, again, goes back to the argument about, well, it's just text on a page. How does Google know if you are sending somebody a free product and that's how you got the link, right? So I feel like to some degree, it's been some PR from Google that has pushed folks in that direction.
Yeah, and then it's been taken up by the SEO community at large. But again, when you get restrictive about what you can and can't do, you're going to miss out on opportunities. Like if you said it never guest post, then you wouldn't do what Claudia and I are doing with ZipSprout, where we're trying to get in front of try to do demos to small marketing agency owners and try and get some visibility from their audiences as well. So it's do
you think links are the number one ranking factor if you had to, if pressed? What do you think? Number one ranking factor?
I would just ask Dan. That's what I would do. Now, are they the number one? I don't think so. No. I mean, I think you've got to have a website before you have links, so what comes first, the website or the links? So can you rank without links? I mean, I think it's happened.
And I think that's sort of like, let's rank ranking factors as if it's this linear have links that can show authority or topical relevance, and links in themselves have page rank versus making a site more crawled. But then you can have other things, like you said, a website that establishes the quality of your content, which is so different. I think just categorically, you can't stack those things.
Right.
I think they're separate.
I mean, to me, as long as people are paying me to build links, I'm going to build links,
Yeah.
and they still are having an impact for sure. And so what percentage of the ranking factor is it? How many do you need? None of these things do I really know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Only Google knows, but we can push on it and sort of learn forward. But why is it there is sort of a shame around link building, or just don't talk about it, or don't talk about doing it at any kind of scale. And that is probably a lot of, fear from Google. I mean, Julie Joyce has been wonderful lately, wonderfully outspoken around link buying, which is, it's you want to talk about a shameful, like the so-called shameful thing, where there's a lot of kind of peer pressure against it. I mean, that's what she and I were on Ross's show, and that's the portion she really was hammering there. And there were people on Twitter saying, "Hey, that's there's just a lot of, I guess, that fear, uncertainty, and doubt from Google, but you can mess up you can get penalties. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
It's risky. There is risk, absolutely, in link building.
Do you think part of it is, if you self-identify as a link builder, you run the danger of being lumped into being looked at as, oh, you're that spammy person that bothers me by emailing me, right? I mean, there's a stigma against, like, everyone. The easy person to make fun of is you see it on Twitter, somebody gets a bad outreach email and they tweet about it. Do you think that's part of it, is like being lumped into this sort of, low quality template driven type of link building as well?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but I mean, this probably happened to us. I mean, we've probably been shamed that I just didn't see it. But yeah, I mean,
because I think a lot when somebody thinks about what they want to do, right, professionally or as a skill, I think people mostly think about something that's going to make them feel good, like they're doing something that's looked at by other people as being high quality or adding value or noble or something like that. And I don't think many people look at somebody doing spammy link building as noble or, right? So maybe that's part of it too, is it's for the people that are willing to set that aside and realize there is a high quality, positive way to do this thing. Because I think it could be looked at in that sort of light as well.
I think I doubt it's going to change in the industry, and I think that's fine. The other side of it is just, okay, all right, you can feel that way or believe those things, whatever they may be, but the links still do have impact. I think there is probably a sense also that it's cheating in some kind of way. So there is this dichotomy of link earning versus link buying. Like, you really earn the link in some kind of way by not promoting it. And so that's a position or a belief that exists. And there's some content that does actually earn links without promotion. It does. You can accelerate that with promotion for sure.
Yeah.
But it's there is, that can genuinely happen. And I think there's this, it's kind of like, if you have to hard sell something, then that's looked down upon. If you get a link that way through the hard sell versus somebody came in the door and just, the angel started singing, like, oh my gosh, I've got a link to this URL. It's incredible. Has everything I've ever wanted in a URL. Yeah. So that, and there's something to be said for, let's think about how do we make something that can earn links that's going to really genuinely do that, but then let's go promote it.
Right.
So I think there's something to be learned from content that you could reasonably assume has earned links. But then here, if you're trying to study your peers or study your competitors And how do you know if the links were earned or built? How do you know for sure? Some older, pages you could probably assume if it was before, 2001 or 2 or something when the link. Well, now even then, link building was going on. Yeah. I don't know. It's something like I think you just go and you just got to kind of embrace it as a thing you do, and just people are gonna. Haters are going to hate, I think they say, and you just kind of proceed with your work and do what you have to do to make links happen.
I have one last great question from Giselle Navarro, who was on episode 105 talking about outreach to big publishers. So if anybody wants to hear that sort of other side of link acquisition, outreach, etc., check out episode 105. It's gotten really great feedback. She wants to know, what does the future of link building look like to you?
So what I'm most excited about learning forward on is the work we're doing with for ZipSprout, because I think there's a real opportunity for kind of this cross-purpose email outreach that's branded, right? So, and with a real emphasis on starting sales conversations, but also on contributing to somebody's website, contributing value to their website. I believe in that. Like, I think there's a way forward there, turning it into a practice, right? Like, or an agency service. That I'm a little bit, I'm not quite sure how that's going to happen if we can. But that I believe is starting to kind of, punch all the right boxes in terms of being a starting point for like discovering the right audiences, and then having the right kinds of conversations that could potentially grow sales and get you links that will ultimately support your rankings. But also you're also building real authority as well. Just from the phone calls, who are these people going to cite about or mention if somebody's like, hey, I really want to do this kind of work, or you're really setting yourself up. You're shaking the right hands. You're having the right kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I like that. Great. Well, Garrett, it's been a great discussion. Thanks for going a little bit over the time slot here, but it's been fantastic. Tell the listeners where you'd like them to check out yourself or your various companies and tools online. Where do you want to send people?
Gosh, so they could go to citationlabs.com. They could also go to zipsprout.com. Either one of those. I'm usually bragging about stuff that we've done from time to time on Twitter. So you can also follow me on Twitter, and I'll be mentioning when the LSF tool finally comes out of beta in the next couple weeks. I'll be mentioning that on Twitter, for example. So yeah, I would say either one of our websites, and if you're not seeing what you're looking for, you can just send me an email, garrett@citationlabs.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Garrett, so much for joining us on episode 107 of Experts on the Wire, and we'll talk to you next time.